So we are warming up the engines. It's about 3:30 in the afternoon. Kind of been raining nasty all day, but this is a pretty good window to head south on, and the timing works out for the canal. So we're gonna give it a shot and see if we can sail down to the canal tonight, either in the morning, in time for the current to change in our favor. Betsy's getting the lines off the mooring, and we should be ready to leave here pretty soon. So we're about an hour out of Kittery. We're about 5 miles offshore. Well, not quite 5 miles. Passing by an island over here. And we've got about 2-meter seas. So that's kind of the average is 6 feet. And we can see we're rolling pretty good. Seas are pretty much beam on. We've got the Genoa up. Wind's too far behind us to use the main. Yeah, it's not too bad. It was raining earlier. So this is about as bad as it's supposed to get. And of course, we've got these fishing floats that we go by. We're hoping that we don't get tangled in one of those. Every once in a while we get a wave that breaks against the boat, but not too bad. This is all we get. We'll be okay.
We are entering the canal, and it's a very windy, wavy, rainy day. Hoping that once we get in the canal, it'll be a little calmer. So we're entering the canal, Cape Cod Canal, and it's been a rough passage. Both John and I have felt the effects of the sea. Hoping that once we get in the canal, things will calm down. Sure if you can see that doesn't matter what the weather is, there are fishermen all along the canal taking advantage of the morning.
We've got 2 of our boats here in the anchorage that are leaving. Whenever you see a bunch of boats leaving, you always wonder if maybe you're reading the weather wrong or looking at the wrong weather. It's a rainy day today. We got the generator running. We're making water. We went in the dinghy yesterday and got some diesel fuel. Got 30 gallons. So that'll take us back over 3/4 of the tank. We'll probably get another 30 gallons tomorrow or Monday. Fuel dock's right over there, so it's easy. The weather doesn't look like it's going to change for a couple days. It's going to get pretty chilly here. everybody's starting to head south, but right now, unless you're making a short jaunt south, wind's kind of against us. So we are going to stay in Onset Bay for a few more days and enjoy this town and run the heat at night. So this is the forecast we're looking at. We're trying to find a weather window out of Onset Bay, and you know, like, this looks pretty much like a beam reach, but it's not, especially in a catamaran. You have to remember this is true wind, so your apparent wind is going to get pulled forward by your boat speed, and so what looks like a beam reach on here is actually going to be more upwind sailing. And then the problem with catamaran like ours is we don't have any dagger boards or deep keels, and so to go in the direction you want to go, you have to actually turn more into the wind because you're getting pushed sideways. And this is just a fact of life in a catamaran like ours. You have to deal with it, so you really have to wait for conditions that are more favorable than this. If we had a catamaran that had dagger boards, this would be possible, or a monohull. It would be a possible sail day. So that's just one of the downsides of having a catamaran with mini keels. You just really gotta wait for downwind sailing. So we're kind of sad we're not going to get to spend more time here in Onset, but even though we don't have a perfect weather window, it's going to get really cold here, down into the 30s, and the next week is all big winds from the wrong direction. So even though we don't have the optimal forecast, we're going to go ahead and head south. We're not sure how far. Could be the Chesapeake, could be North Carolina, and we'll hopefully get fair winds. We will see. But we're heading out of here. So we are heading out into Long Island Sound, coming down out of the Cape Cod area, kind of straight over that direction. Over the top of that land is Martha's Vineyard. I think that might be, barely see it way in the distance. We're motoring into a little bit of a swell, probably about a half a meter swell or so. No wind. The wind is supposed to come in about 7:30 tonight, and we'll see how far on the nose it is. Hopefully not too bad. So we're still motoring. We're starting to get a little bit of wind. Not quite enough to sail, and that's our moon coming up tonight. It's about 7:30, and it's either full or almost full or just past full. I'm not sure. I didn't look at the Solinar. And this is our sunset in front of us. Pretty. We're off the coast of Long Island. We sailed most of the night on just the Genoa. The wind kind of came up after it got dark, and we don't like putting the mainsail up at night. It's a beautiful morning. The wind is starting to fill in a little bit. We're getting about 10 to 13 knots right now. And so we have the sails up. Looks like we need to tighten up on the Genoa a little bit. So we got the main up, first reef point, because we're expecting to get winds into the high teens, so maybe even higher. So we'll stick with that first reef point. Doing about 6.5, 7 knots. So this is what it looks like when we're sailing 8 and 9 knots. Haven't had a agape going this fast in a while. And to do it, you pretty much have to have a beam reach or a slightly close reach. We have the wind on. We have the wind set at about 80 degrees apparent right now. You can see the sea's not too bad. It's a little rolly and we're hoping it stays like this. If it stays like this, we're good. If it gets rougher, then we'll have to bear off and we'll lose even more ground towards where we're going. But we definitely are picking up some froth here. This poor guy just landed in our cockpit. He's sitting outside our slider. He didn't really land, he kind of came in for a crash landing and he was having to work hard to try to get on the boat in this wind. Poor guy. I don't know what he's doing. 100 miles offshore, but he's taking a ride on agape. We're 24 hours into our trip from Onset Bay, Massachusetts to, we're thinking maybe Cape Lookout, North Carolina, but remains to be seen. We're kind of being driven offshore right now. We're about 150 miles offshore and kind of battling to get back in. We've gone 125 miles in 24 hours. Right now we're sailing at about 7.5 to 8.5 knots and about 15 knots of wind, and it's just not quite from the right direction. So it's supposed to calm down in about 12 hours and turn a little bit, so we're kind of waiting for that to see if we can't then start heading in towards the coast. So it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we get some pretty strong gusts, so we had to kind of turn downwind. You can see we've got quite a sea behind us here. You know, basically this dinghy sits about 6 feet up in the air, so we've got some 6 and 8 foot waves coming around behind us here. Nothing's come across the back of the transom yet, but it's a little bit angry out there. And mainly it's coming from this direction over here. See if I can get a good view here. So we're supposed to have this for a couple hours, maybe 5 or 6, and then things will start to calm down. Hopefully the forecast is right. So the sun has come up. It's the start of the second day of our trip from Kittery, Maine south. I just say south now because we don't actually know where we're going. Got some clouds, but not too bad. No rain expected. As you can see from the track that I've put up, we've gone on quite a little sailing adventure. The wind kind of really drove us east more than we expected. It actually drove us into the Gulf Stream. And so we had to reverse course almost and motor out of the Gulf Stream so that we could start making progress south. So we're making progress south now. We still have about a 1 knot current against us, but that's just the edge of the Gulf Stream. So we're headed for Norfolk right now. That could change. We could end up going to North Carolina, but probably looks like Norfolk. About a 2-day motor, because our wind is going to be about like this, about 5 knots. Not sailable. Well, we're at noon on the second day, leaving Kittery Point. We've gone about 250 miles, and a little bit of that's been wayward action. You can see by the track here how we ended up going far east, and then unfortunately we got caught in the upper end of the Gulf Stream. So we've been battling current trying to get back south and east. So we're kind of on the edge right now. We still got about a knot current working against us, so we're working our way out of that, get closer into shore, and then we'll start heading south. And looks like Norfolk is probably our destination. We don't really have the time, weather, or fuel to go all the way to North Carolina, so we'll probably duck into Norfolk for a while. There's supposed to be some pretty nasty winds from the south for a few days, maybe even a week. So we're going to get out of that. So about 125 miles each day. Did some fast sailing. You can see here we doing 9 knots, actually 10 knots at one time, and I didn't get a picture of that, but unfortunately it was kind of in the wrong direction. So it did help us, but not as much as you would think. So we'll just keep motoring. We're supposed to have pretty calm seas and wind for the next 2 days, so probably just motor into Norfolk. Looks like we got some dolphins coming to visit. There they are. Look at that. There he is. Yep. Hey guys. Got some dolphins here to play. There's another one over here. Always fun when we get dolphins. Beautiful. Don't fall in. beautiful.